Spectre, so you can call me Mr. Nightmare, Mr. Fear. It's time for my live reaction to two disturbing true Uber stories, but horror stories by Mr. Nightmare. And here we go. Oh shoot! Oh shoot! Hang on. Back. Alright, just. Yeah, whoa! Oh! Oh yeah! Mr. Nightmare, I just love these videos. Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Here we go. Two horror stories. Oh shoot! Oh shoot! Oh shoot! I'm going to Pritchard Park Towns recording, so yeah.
In the year 2014, I frequently used the app Uber because I wasn't able to drive for 12 months due to some DUI charges. Just a stupid mistake overall. There's this nightclub bar in my town that I would sometimes go to on the weekends with my friends. Sometimes I would get a ride home with a designated driver if we had one, and sometimes we would catch an Uber. This night I wasn't feeling too great, so I left a little early. It was somewhere between 1 and 2 in the morning. It was way too cold to walk home, so I called for an Uber. A guy nearby named Alex popped up, and I gotta be honest, he was a little creepy looking. He was older, didn't really smile in his picture, and he had a grayish goatee with a black beanie cap on.
Oops.
He was only 2 miles away, so I didn't really care. It said he had a Chevy Malibu, which sounded nice, so I requested he come pick me up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
On the bench outside the club next to the bouncer, who stood still like a statue, hands folded together. About 5 minutes later, a silver 2003 or something Chevy Malibu pulled up in front of the club. I stood up, a bit disappointed. It was such an old, ratty-looking car. The guy didn't call me over or honk or anything. He just waited by the curb. So I got up and entered the back seat of the car.
That's his personality.
Right away, things got uncomfortable. He didn't say hello. He didn't shake my hand. He didn't even turn his head to look at me. All he said was in a very quiet voice, "Where are you headed?" To which I replied with my address. We began moving down Main Street, but in the wrong direction of my house. I told him this, and he turned left at the next intersection. Now we were moving away from the main roads and down the quieter residential areas. He didn't put my address into his phone, so I felt really strange. I didn't know if he was expecting me to direct him or not. I ended up putting my address into my own phone so he could listen. When the GPS said turn left down the next street, he completely missed it. I made a confused hand gesture. He noticed it and said, "I just gotta make a quick stop. Don't worry, I'll give you a discount." Even though I was drunk, I still knew something bad was going on. Then that's when I noticed the handgun sticking out from his middle glove box next to him. By now, I was trying to figure out how to get out of this car.
Tell him you gotta pee.
At the next
Stop by at a restaurant and say you gotta pee.
Handle very quietly, but it wouldn't open. I saw that the child lock was on, and from this point forward, my heart was racing. The man was driving us far out of the direction of my house. We must have been 2 towns over by now. I was getting desperate. I couldn't call the cops because I didn't know what this guy might do. I figured my best option would be attempting to flick the child lock switch next to him by the front seats. I had to somehow slide over to the opposite side of the back seat behind him without him noticing. This was one of the most tense moments of my life.
Not good.
I locked my sight on his head through the rearview mirror, making sure he wasn't looking.
Alright.
I very casually slid behind him. Thankfully, he didn't notice.
Or did he?
Now came the scariest part. I had to reach for the button up front at the next red light before he could do anything.
Alright, Mom.
Each light we passed, I felt more and more tension build up as I was waiting for one of them to turn yellow. And eventually, one finally did. He slowed the car at an intersection that would usually be busy during daylight hours. It was a perfect escape point. The car came to a stop. I knew this light wasn't very long, so I had to be quick. A car was stopped at the opposite side of the intersection, which made me feel a little better. With all of my courage, I reached my hand up to the lit-up child lock button, and I must have startled him because he jumped 2 inches out from his seat. He screamed at me, and as I feared he would, he went for the gun right next to him. I was able to open the door and flee to the nearby Cadillac Escalade, where I banged on their windows asking for help. They drove off, completely avoiding me, but it didn't matter because the man in his Chevy Malibu was already gone down the block. I ran into a nearby grocery store that was open 24 hours, where I called the taxi this time. This was a very sobering experience because I don't remember being drunk at all in that store or during the taxi ride home. I reported the driver to Uber, who said they would escalate the situation to the authorities. It wasn't until a whole minute later that an officer finally showed up at my front door for some questioning. And that was the end of that. I have no idea what became of that guy, but I've never used an Uber since.
Good idea. Gotta be careful. Alright, I bet this one's more interesting. There's only 2 stores. We're halfway there. Oh shoot, Logan.
As a
Logan
former
poster.
Uber driver, I've dealt with a whole bunch of unpleasant characters, from the drunken groups of friends on Saturday nights to the
This is
people
a
who
driver's point of
pretend to
view?
be handicapped to get free rides. But every so often, you may
got
pick
rid
up
of that,
somebody who
jeez.
can just be classified as a straight-up creep.
Oh, creep.
I've picked up a few of
Creeper
these
from
guys,
Scooby-Doo.
but never one quite as bad as a guy named Tom. It was
Alan?
a Friday night in December, one of the coldest nights of the year. I had nothing to do, so I figured I'd do some late-night pickups. This was 2 years ago. I was 18 and had a new Honda Accord. My parents kind of spoiled me a bit. I was a very skinny 18-year-old, though. That's why my dad told me to always keep a blade in my car, because you never know what kind of nuts are getting into the car. A guy named Tom popped up a couple miles away by a major shopping area. I responded to his request and started driving in that direction.
Tom Brady.
I pulled up in front of the shopping center where I saw a group of teenagers hanging out.
Can't be
It
waiting for
looked
this
like trouble. I hoped this Tom guy wasn't part of this group. A bunch of them looked at me in my car as I slowly passed. Eventually, I just hit the gas and went further into the parking lot of the shopping center, wanting to get away from this group.
We gotta
Around the whole
get away.
lot until I finally noticed through my left mirror somebody approaching my car from behind. I rolled down my window and called out Tom, and he called back yes. I told him to hop in. I had to repeat myself 3 times, and given that all I was saying was hop in very clearly, it made the situation very weird from the start.
He's trying to rob
The
you.
4th time, he finally understood me and walked slowly around the back, getting
He's
into
setting
the
you up.
seat right behind me. Usually the people I picked up would sit diagonally from me, which is what I preferred. When people sat right behind me, it just made me a little paranoid sometimes, especially when the person seemed kind of creepy. This guy was
Be like a Michael
he had
Myers
to be in his
situation, yeah.
upper 40s. Where to? I asked him. He told me an address, which I entered into my phone. By his voice, I could tell he was a very heavy smoker. Come to think of it, my car was starting to smell like cigarettes too. The address he gave me was 10 miles away, which was fine, since it meant I'd be making more money. I tried making small talk initially, which didn't work out too well. Like if I would ask him a yes or no question, sometimes he would just mumble, and any other questions led to dry responses. I stopped talking when he completely ignored one of my questions. That was within just 5 miles. There was still 5 to go. By the 6-mile mark, things started getting uneasy in there. I was afraid to look into the rearview mirror because I was so sure that he was staring at me.
Don't do it.
I
Then
took
you
a quick
get
half-second glance and saw I was right. He was in fact staring at me.
Oh Jesus.
My body forced my foot down heavier on the gas. I wanted this ride to be over sooner.
Good idea.
By the 8-mile mark, I started to realize we were in the middle of nowhere. We were on basically a deserted street with woods on either side and occasional buildings. I was growing suspicious now as to where this address he told me actually was. So, while driving, I dragged my finger across my phone to slide the map in the direction of the address. It seemed to lead to a dead-end street with no surrounding streets nearby. I was getting more and more nervous with each passing minute now. I shot a glance back up again at the mirror, and he was still watching me. I finally summed up the courage to ask him if the address he gave me was of his house. There was silence for a few moments, and I thought he was once again going to ignore me, or possibly didn't hear me. But 5 seconds later, he finally answered yes. There was less than a mile left in the drive now, still surrounded by nothing but woods with the occasional empty-looking building. I was approaching the dead-end street that the address he gave me resided on, hoping some houses would come into sight. As the street came up, I slowed down so I could get a good look of it. But nothing could be seen. Just pitch blackness. I could only imagine
Gangsta.
why he wanted to get me out here alone, so far away from anybody or anything. I casually kept driving, pretending like I missed it, hoping he wouldn't notice. But he did. Instantly, he hopped out of his seat and yelled at me to turn around.
Oh.
Honestly, I felt like my life was on the line, so I apologized and did a quick 3-point turn. As I was reapproaching the dead-end street, I dug my hands into the netting compartment on the side of my seat where I kept my blade. I very quietly flicked the blade open and held it tight in my right hand, ready to use it. I turned down the dead-end road, with my headlights now displaying just what I thought I would see. Nothing but trees on either side. I made it to the end of the road, not a single house or building on the road. I just knew something was about to go down. I was just trying to physically and mentally prepare myself.
Less than 2 minutes. How's this gonna end?
Suddenly, he said in as soft as a voice as he probably could, "Thanks for the ride." I wasn't even thinking about money at this point. He opened
Don't
his
do
door,
that.
but before stepping out, he said, "Could you get out of the car for a second? I need help carrying my bag. I have a bad back." But he didn't have a bag. I knew he didn't. He didn't come in with one. I replied, yeah, sure, let yourself out and I'll help you in a sec." The shakiness in my voice was too obvious.
You're gonna drive away, aren't you?
What happened next, I never imagined would have happened. All of a sudden, I felt pressure on my neck. It took me at least a second before I could realize he was choking me from the back seat. Immediately, I drilled the blade into his left arm, and he screamed in pain, releasing his grip on my neck. He fell out of the car and onto the street, and I took that opportunity to turn the car around and practically floor it down the street until I returned to a busy road.
Good.
I actually didn't end up calling the cops. I was just too scared to do anything but drive
What?
home.
So you kept it
By
quiet.
the time I got home, I just wanted to go to sleep and forget about it. Needless to say, I resigned from my Uber driving days after this incident.
Good idea. I knew it. Yeah, you gotta be careful there, people. Sorry, just stretching my arms. Yeah, you gotta be careful out there, people. The crazy people in this world, you know? A few months ago, I was at a Palisades Park Mall in New York, and this guy came up to me. He's like, "Hey, what's up, brother?" He sat right next to me in the bench, that bench I was sitting at. He's like, shook my hand. He's like, "What's up, brother?" And I was like, "Oh no, this is not good." He was like, "Hey, would you like to donate money for this basketball fundraiser thing?" And I was like, I don't have any money on me at the moment, but my mom's coming in a few minutes, so I'll ask her if we'd like to do something." He said, "Okay," and he took off, and I ran away. Like, once I found my mom. I'm gonna learn to keep away from being alone in the mall from now on. So yeah, you gotta be careful out there, people. Crazy. So got Mr. Nightmare. He's awesome. Rate, comment, subscribe. Favorite. Rate, comment, subscribe. Even favorite. Talk to you people later. Peace.